an internet connection and be the only one on the square at night who would live stream that. But later what we see within this last couple of years, a lot of other companies went into the digital world, and it's not just the state companies, the oligarch-owned channels. It's not just in Ukraine, but in the whole region. So really your good story, your independent piece of reporting is often drawn in that noise of in that noise. And it's even worse if you're a smaller station, if you're like an independent investigative unit. You've earlier seen the brilliant job of also Hromadske had participated, the documentary on the killing Pavel, done in cooperation with OCCRP. So even that kind of stories could be somehow attacked by all kind of the alternative media. That's the term I don't really like. So we are here, and I represent the team which is building the independent TV station. We started from a dozen of people 4 years ago. Now we have like 150 doing all kind of things, but really it's not just about to make the story. It's all about how to make story heard. And at this conference, not just at this conference, while talking in a lot of places like that, you hear the cyber warfare, bots, all these kind of things. But in the end, probably sometimes it's important to remind that it has a direct effect to the people. And that's exactly what we wanted to do with this particular project with Joe, that, sometimes you can't debunk the facts with another document because people don't care that much. But sometimes you can really do the moving piece, which is real, which can't be, faked. And that's what Joe have done together with us.
Right, thank you. So before we get into what these wonderful volunteers are kind of seeing and experiencing right now with these VR headsets on, I'm just going to give you a bit of background about myself and how I, as a freelance still photographer, as a documentary photographer, got turned on to this new technology. So I've lived in Ukraine for essentially the past 15 years. So when the Maidan started, I didn't hop on an airplane and go to a foreign country and photograph a story that I didn't really understand in a culture they didn't know. I walked to the barricades and I essentially photographed my community. It's kind of really hard for me to explain what photographing the revolution was like, but I would kind of describe it as this emotional mix of pride, fear, sorrow, shock, and anger, all at the top of the peak of what you could imagine those things to be, and almost all at the same time. So I'm just tell you a quick little story about this gentleman. This is on February 19th. This is kind of a lull in the violence between the 18th and 20th of February, which almost 100 demonstrators were killed. And I saw this man walking through the Maidan Square with a cane really slowly. And he noticed that I was bending down to take his photograph. And he pulled a sword out of his cane and just stood there. And I took a few photographs of him. And I was just like amazed. Like, what is this man doing here with a sword? But he came to the square to defend his country and his city. So, the Maidan itself was, like I said, extremely moving. And one of the things I decided to do while I was still on the square was to start photographing individuals who were severely wounded there. This is Volodymyr Honcharovsky. He's about 33 years old. He was shot 3 times on February 20th. He has severe problems with nerve damage. And here we see him at home. And he was dealing with an addiction to painkillers. So I spent a lot of time with these gentlemen. This is a Ukrainian contract soldier from Mykolaiv, which is in southern Ukraine. He is a burn victim. It was a Grad rocket attack, and he had severe burns on something about 70% of his body. This is a volunteer combatant who lost about 90% of the right side of his brain. He no longer moves, walks, talks. So I was very moved by these men and their stories, and I created a website called rana.com.ua where I self-published this work, and there's a small link on the side where if you want to make direct donations to these soldiers or others, you can do so. And Time Magazine, for example, picked up the story, and it was around this time that I started to realize that my photographs really weren't reaching the people that I wanted to reach. 20 years ago, to have your work published in time, you know, with so much space was kind of a big deal. But I kind of started to realize that my photography wasn't really reaching as wide of an audience and it wasn't having the emotional impact that I want it to have. You know, we all sit down at our computers or our phones and we scroll through pictures of cats, kids, genocide without really thinking about it much. So I was looking for a new medium where I could try to really kind of capture people and try to get some of that emotion that I was describing earlier for people to feel that. I wanted people to feel that emotion and to experience something. So if you just bear with me for a second, I'm going to show you some clips that our volunteers are looking at right now in these VR headsets.
So we would see, because what is in, so Joe went to do the VR story on that 360, which is, we've seen the shorter movies. I think a lot of them, a lot of you have done that. But even for me, it is a very incredible experience because it's a documentary with a script. You definitely will try to show some pieces on the screens, but definitely you need to experience this technology, and it would be very interesting to hear the people. But that's how it looks in Jaw. You can really elaborate more on that, how it works.
Sure. So I'm going to show you a few clips right away. This is, it's kind of hard to kind of flatten out and have the same experience that you would have when viewing this film through a headset. But I'll just show you a few minutes and talk a little bit more about the process.
There was a moment that...
Sorry, and let me explain as well. This is a film about a wounded soldier. He's 26 years old, and his wife essentially takes care of him, and he's being treated at a private clinic just outside of the Ukrainian capital in a town called Brovary.
Completely changed his condition. He couldn't breathe properly, which led to his brain not receiving enough oxygen. As a result, he completely stopped walking and completely stopped moving his arms and legs.
So if you had a headset on, you would actually turn your head and watch these people move around.
Молодець, і опускаємо. Рахуємо. Раз. Голова куди дивиться? Три. Молодець. Чотири. П'ять. Молодець. Шість.
There were no rehab centers for us to choose from. When we were in the hospital in Odessa, I didn't know who to turn to or where even to go. I turned the entire internet inside out and by chance found Nodus. It is a one-of-a-kind center that deals solely with neurological disorders. A member of a parliament assisted us by writing a letter to Nodus, and a state agency also asked to please take this wounded soldier. They showed us on TV and people donated some money, but either way, the amount we raised wouldn't pay for a month of rehab in a private clinic.
So I'm going to fast forward just a little bit to the end here. So Vadim is undergoing physical therapy. Oh, sorry, one moment.
Кони, Вадим. Вадим, щасний. Так, Вадим, спокійно.
Вадим, вже бігти хочете, так?
Забираємо.
So we can just stop that. Can we? Yeah. I'm trying. There we go. Okay.
So Joe, we are waiting for you here back,
Sure.
and I would just, before Joe start, would add that we can speak about technology, but as a reporter and as an editor, I would also say that we're doing a lot of stories. I think a lot of colleagues are sometimes have a bit of frustrated that some stories are not reaching. It's all about our job. It's about making people to watch and listen. So that's really we see as one of the ways to really get to the people, and we are supposed to really find the ways. And I think that would be the way to go through this wall of the informational noise. And you'll go forward.
No, that's actually, you've just both watched the film, correct? What was your reaction?
And we don't have the mic, probably, if I would. Yeah, if somebody would give me, maybe if you have a mic, yeah, we'll have a chance to, yeah. I know it's a difficult film. I see the audience doesn't watch that full, but you probably would get the feeling. So, and of course, it's a hard film to say. It's not an entertaining piece, but just also about this experience you have.
Well, about the experience, obviously you get really close to the people. I mean, you can really, it's another kind of feeling than if you just see it on a screen. I mean, you're really next to them, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, so I guess that's also a way of, I mean, that also brings it closer, and you kind of feel closer than if you just see it on a screen, because it's obviously a very gripping story. But it gets closer even with this.
Okay.
Yeah, I think about the technology, it makes nothing else. Like, I have no idea what happened while we were watching the film. I was completely engrossed in it, and it takes over your world. It's not like when you're watching something on a screen and actually you're kind of chatting to someone or you're sending a text. You're right there in their story and you can't get away from it. It's much more like you're living their life than just watching it.
Thanks for watching and enjoy.
No, that's perfect. You've actually both summed up kind of what I was going to say anyway. It's very immersive, and I'm sure most of you probably understand, so when you're wearing this headset, where you move your head is kind of where the image changes. So that's what I was just trying to show a little bit on these screens, but I'm not sure if it really comes across that well. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So if you do have questions, really, we would maybe happy. There are still a bit of complication about the production. You would probably say that we think the technology would be more advanced to do so.
I think the technology is not where it should be just yet. I think it's going to take off eventually, but there's a lot of bugs in the system. So we're all kind of used to using these perfectly calibrated iPhones, but this is more like using like one of these old PDAs that you have a stylus. It's really kind of filled with bugs and it's not so easy to use, but that's changing and shifting very quickly.
So we are about to pass the word to our colleagues, and thanks a lot for having this time with us. I would also encourage you really to follow George's work and our work. We try to do a lot in English at Hromadske just to explain our region, and also we've taken this choice not sometimes often like to analyze and debunk, but really go to the ground, go to the field, and sometimes to remind what the story is. Because it's very, we feel especially in the times of conflict, it's when the truth has become an opinion, sometimes you really just not need to be on the spot, show the people, talk to the people, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.